I call to order the December 10, 2008 meeting of the Planning Commission. My name is Michael Kane. I serve as chair of the Planning Commission. My fellow commissioners and I welcome you and thank you for attending tonight's meeting. The Planning Commission is composed of citizens appointed by the Town Council to review planning and development issues and to make decisions and recommendations to Town Council regarding land use for both commercial and residential matters. Ours is a quasi-judicial procedure guided by the town's general plan, zoning codes, and other standards and guidelines that have been adopted by Town Council. Again, thank you for attending tonight's meeting. We appreciate public testimony and look forward to yours as we evaluate each application. As a general reminder, please turn off your cell phones. And hopefully I have done that. All right. Roll call. Mrs. Hamilton, will you call the roll?
Commissioner Jensen.
Commissioner Jensen is excused this evening.
Commissioner Sayoc.
Present.
Commissioner Michichi.
Go.
Commissioner Telesfor.
Here.
Commissioner Bourgeois.
Here.
Vice Chair O'Donnell.
Here.
And Chairman King.
Here. Commissioner Bourgeois, will you lead us in the pledge?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We have November 12, 2008 minutes to approve this evening. Do we have any discussion, or may I have a motion? Commissioner Michichi.
I'll make a motion to approve.
Second?
I'll second.
Commissioner Sayoc, second. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed?
I'll abstain. I wasn't here.
Motion carries 5-0 with one abstention. Written communications. We have no formal written communications, although there are some items that have been submitted for item 4 that we will get to later this evening. Requested continuances. Tonight we have one requested continuance. It's item 3, 520 Santa Rosa Drive. Do we have discussion, or may I have a motion?
So moved.
We have a motion. We have a second. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Motion carries, and this item is then continued to, what date was requested? It was the second meeting in January, right?
Yes, January
Okay.
28, 2009.
Thank you. Subcommittee reports. In addition to our Planning Commission responsibilities, each of us serves on one or two subcommittees. Commissioner O'Donnell, can you give us an update on General Plan and the General Plan Advisory Committee?
Either committee has met, so I have no report.
Are there future meeting dates?
We have no dates yet.
Thank you. Commissioner Sayoc, I think CDAC had an important meeting today. Can you
Yes,
tell
we
us what happened?
Yes, I'd be happy to share. CDAC Conceptual Development Advisory Committee did meet this afternoon at 4:30. It is for a proposed project at Conceptual Nature at 15600 and 15650 Los Gatos Boulevard. It's the site that was formerly occupied by Los Gatos Chevrolet. The applicant, there's 4 things that they proposed. One is demolition of the existing structures and construction of a 26,800 square foot, 1-story commercial building with a drive-through for a proposed pharmacy, and also construction of a separate 4,500 square foot, 1-story commercial building on the corner. The committee, we had great discussion. Both Commissioners O'Donnell and Telesfor were present. And some of the issues that we had discussed was the drive-through for the pharmacy. We heard both sides of the argument for and against. We also talked about land coverage. With this design, it takes about 26% coverage of the land. And we talked about that versus the maximum ceiling of 50% and the pros and cons of that. Talked about the parking. Right now, the design has the parking up front, whereas the Los Gatos Boulevard plan suggests that parking be placed in the rear. We also talked about providing better linkages with neighborhoods. Since all development along Los Gatos Boulevard is adjacent to residential neighborhoods, we talked about the linkages with the surrounding neighborhoods. And one thing particularly interesting about this project is the applicant also owns two other parcels on Los Gatos Boulevard, one on the corner of Los Gatos Boulevard and Gateway, and the other one, the old Swanson site. So we talked about just the linkages between all three sites and what really is the long-term plan by the applicant to really maintain an overall cohesive view of Los Gatos Boulevard as development moves forward. So this will certainly be coming forward to the commission, and I'm sure we'll be getting more details as it moves forward.
Thank you. Commissioner, may I point out that Commissioner O'Donnell is not a member of that committee, and due to the importance of the matter and the illness of Commissioner Jensen, I called Commissioner O'Donnell, and he agreed to be there pretty much on a last-minute basis. So thank you. Commissioner Machici, anything new on historic preservation or architectural standards?
I did not attend the last meeting, and the minutes did not come out, so that she may want to do some verbal, but it may be better to wait until next meeting to voice the goings-on.
What's your preference, Commissioner? Tell us for me.
I would rather wait. I think I remember one of our applications on Broadway.
You were there.
I was there.
Excellent. Thank you.
I don't remember the other one. Anyway, it was an approval of an addition, it was interesting because it was this wonderful home on Broadway that actually had the plans from 1901 or whatever it was, and they wanted to recreate the front facade to mimic what was originally brought before then. So that was kind of, we've never seen that before, and that was really exciting. And I'll report on the rest next meeting.
Very good. Commissioner Bourgeois, do we have a report on Sustainability Committee?
We have not met since our last Planning Commission meeting, but we are meeting tomorrow at 4 p.m. across the street at the Neighborhood Center. So I believe the results from the emissions, what's it called? Yeah, the emissions reduction plans. Thank you.
Oh, the ARP.
Yeah. are going to be presented to the committee tomorrow.
Thank you very much. We move now to verbal communications. As is your right, any member of the audience may speak for up to 3 minutes on any subject not on tonight's agenda. If you intend to speak, please fill out a speaker card located on the seat back in front of you and turn that card into a staff member on your right. When speaking at the podium, state your name and address for the record, and please understand that state law prohibits the Commission from taking any action or discussing any topic that may be presented during verbal communications. I now have one speaker card for verbal communications, and the applicant's name is Phil Machici. Mr. Machici, he's right here. For the record.
Is this on? Okay.
You have 3 minutes, Citizen Machici.
Phil Machici, 220 Alexander Avenue, Los Gatos. I'm here to speak about our chairperson tonight. I read your email today where you requested that you go quietly as you came in, and I had elected to ignore that and blow the horn for you. So now I had made a bunch of notes here, and then I found a letter from Commissioner O'Donnell, and I decided plagiarism was the better side of the value I was going to give tonight. So I'm going to read Commissioner O'Donnell's letter, if I may. Okay? Dear Michael, you have requested that we not bring attention to you and all of your good service this evening on the occasion of your last meeting as a planning commissioner. I am therefore asking this opportunity on behalf of all of us, your fellow commissioners, to tell you how much we will miss you and how much we appreciated your extraordinary service as a commissioner. 5 out of the 6 agreed with that, Michael. Your intelligence and humor have been a great help. We respect you for always being well prepared, thoroughly conversant with the facts and issues. With your recent experiences, I am reminded of John Kennedy's comments when he said, "The credit belongs to the man who is actually in the arena, whose face is marred by dust and sweat and blood, who knows the great enthusiasms, the great devotions, and spends himself as a worthy cause, who at best, if he wins, knows the thrills of high achievement, and if he fails, at least feels daring greatly. so that his place shall never be with those cold and timid souls who know neither victory nor defeat. Thank you again, Michael, for your service.
Beggar that I am even poor in thanks, but I thank you all. Consent calendar. We have 2 items on consent tonight. Item 1, the proposed meeting scheduled for 2009 for the Planning Commission. And item 2, 14103A Winchester Boulevard.
Can we do it in
It's
single?
conditional use permit application U08016, requesting approval to operate a fine arts school on property zoned C1. This is APN 406-30015. Property owner is Winchester Associates. The applicant is Rita Young Green. Do I have a motion on consent? Well, I should clarify before I ask for a motion. Anyone on the commission may wish to pull either one of those items. Is there any commissioner who wishes to do so? Commissioner Telesfori.
I really don't want to pull this item, but I would like a question answered from staff, if I can, so we can avoid pulling it. But I think it's something, my question is something that needs to be brought to light.
What is the question?
The question is, I am curious, since it is an art school, if they are following the recommendations for arts supplies and materials that are from the Office of Environmental Health Hazards Assessment and from the State of California Education System. I didn't see that in the report, and I didn't, and I believe it's, what triggered it was the letter from the Cheryl Jensen when she was questioning about the hazard of paint. For another reason, it led me to question the question of materials and art supplies.
Well, staff, can
So I don't
we
know
answer
if you can
the
just
question?
answer that.
Staff does not know if the materials that she's using is on that list, but staff is aware that the paints are water-based and therefore non-toxic.
Okay, I have 23 pages of manufactured and brand names and then alternate recommendations. So I could either give that to you and you could check it, but on behalf of children and health issues that I'm certainly aware of and adhere to, I would like somehow for this to be incorporated into the conditions of use. So I don't know how we do that.
Well, we're getting pretty close to pulling it. Either you submit that on good faith or we pull it. Commissioner Michichi?
No, I noticed Mr. Korb.
Mr. Korb, I was just going to say, do
Well,
you have a...
again, you can just submit that information to the Community Development Department, and they can pass this on to the applicant and ensure that the applicant is aware of it. The applicant, I'm not certain what regulatory requirements they must meet for their operation, but
Okay.
they can. But if you want to make impose any kind of conditions or change any of the
Then I'm gonna
application,
okay.
then we're going to have to.
Then, for the sake of children and their health, I will pull it for here in Los Gatos. I'm
We
sorry.
will hear this item
Tonight?
tonight, yes.
Okay.
Pulled.
Thank you.
We have one item left on consent. Can I have a motion or discussion?
I'll move to approve the consent calendar with only item 1 on it.
Second.
Second discussion. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 6-1. We go to continued public hearings. We had one item on continued public hearings, item 3 on tonight's agenda, but that has been continued. So we move on to new public hearings, and I'm going to begin with the item we just pulled off of consent. Commissioner Telesfori, why don't you launch the ship and discuss it or make a motion?
I think you need a staff report.
Ooh.
We'll have to have public.
We'll seek a staff report first.
Yeah, any item pulled from consent would follow the normal public hearing process, so.
Let's go through it. Commissioner O'Donnell.
I would just like to ask the town attorney a question. As I understood the comments about Commissioner Telesfor's interest and intelligent desires, I guess the question I have is, since I don't think anybody sitting at this table except Commissioner Telesfor knows whether there is any law requiring this, and if there is no such law, I'm not quite sure how it is in our purview to require it. So I guess what I'm asking is, should we know what we're doing? I don't.
Well, we should always know what we're doing. It goes without saying. Not that we always do. But I can't say what Commissioner Telesfor has in mind, what she wants to propose regarding any conditions, so I don't want to guess at what she's thinking. But what I understand is if she wants to discuss imposing conditions, whether they're conditions that make sense or not, that discussion has to occur within the context of an item that's pulled. Again, we may ultimately not advise adding a condition of the sort that that Commissioner Telesfor may have in mind, but a hearing would have to be held in order to even have that discussion.
All right, good. Do we have a staff report?
Good evening, Commissioners. My name is Jennifer Savage, and I'm a planner with the Planning Department. This project is located on Winchester Boulevard at the Visono Shopping Center. It is located in one of the suites that was previously occupied by a chiropractic office. The Fine Art School consists of teaching children 4.5 to 18 years in age. The hours of operation will, at the maximum, be from 9 a.m. to 3:30 p.m. Monday through Friday, and similar hours on Saturday, which I'll have for you in a moment. They do comply with parking requirements, and they do comply with the zoning regulations. I am here to answer any questions.
The Saturday hours are 9 to 3:30, I believe.
9 to 3:30.
Commissioners, questions for staff?
Is the applicant here?
Is the applicant here?
She is.
We will find out. Did you want to ask staff anything about your toxic report?
I don't have anything at this time, thank you.
Okay. I will now open the public hearing and will shortly call the applicant, if present, who will have up to 5 minutes to speak. After any other public members speak, the applicant may have up to 3 minutes for rebuttal. If there are members of the public who wish to speak on this matter after the applicant, please turn in a speaker card. You will each have up to 3 minutes to speak. And I now call the applicant, Rita Young Green.
Thank you for reviewing my application. The materials that we use are all labeled non-toxic, and except for the clay, which has some silicates in it, but parents are allowed to choose whether they want their child to do the clay project or not, and we relegate kids who are not doing the clay project to one side of the room, and the drawing is done with the kids who are drawing instead of doing the clay project. As far as I know, I haven't seen that list in terms of all the acceptable materials, but we order largely from a supplier of art supplies, come from sources that are fine art places, but also for children. So all the inks that we use for printmaking, we have adapted 4 types of printmaking processes to children, and all the inks are non-toxic and water-based.
Thank you.
Sure.
Questions for the applicant?
But I haven't seen that list.
Yeah.
No, I've never seen that. I'm a private, so that hasn't
Are you a
been.
teaching artist? Are you a teacher?
I am. I'm the founder. I designed this art program for my children. And I'm an artist.
Okay. I commend you for opening the school. We certainly can use as many art schools as we can for children. But I bring this to your attention because I am sure that as the owner and the teacher of an art school, you would want to make sure that the children that you that come to your school are safe. And there are alternatives to some of the products that you're talking about. So if you're not familiar, I really would like to have you take a look at this list.
Yeah, I'm curious about the list. I doubt that any of the things that we use are harmful.
I don't know because I don't know what you use. So
Right.
it's going to be up to you to, as far as I'm concerned, to work with this list. I would highly suggest it.
I will be happy to. I really doubt that there's anything on that list that's because
I don't know.
Yeah, because everything we use is labeled non-toxic, and it's.
Well, there's other elements besides that. I get a little nervous when you dedicate kids on one side of the room and from another side of the room. Who controls? Do you have? How does?
We have 2 teachers typically.
Okay.
All right. We have very small classes. It's not a room of 20 kids. We have 6 students is the limit for any program. During the school year, we allow makeups, and the class count cannot exceed 7 students per instructor because of our program, because of how we're trying to teach the program. You know, it's our method that structures that. I designed this art program for my children, and out of that evolved something a lot bigger.
Well, like I say, I know, and I'm sure it did, and I commend you for that. I would only suggest that you also might want to refer to the California Standards and Guidelines for the Visual and Performing Arts, and you'll see also that there's lots of websites that also speak about materials, toxic and non-toxic.
Mm-hmm.
So it would help you, I think.
Yeah, I'd be happy
as
to do
teachers,
that.
we're always looking for
Exactly.
resources.
And
So-
I
And I assume this is a resource for you.
yes, absolutely.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Telesfori, do you have copies of that list available? And was there an opportunity to review any of that with staff? Or the applicant?
There was not an opportunity. And I would be very happy to leave it. And staff, how would you like, shall I ask?
Why don't we pass it over?
I mean, my question to the commissioner would be to clarify if this is really for a resource or if you wanted it to go any further as far as conditioning. Again, that would really need to be thought through because there's a lot of research involved and whether or not that's a list that's looks pretty thick. So. So I would just ask you to
I'm
maybe.
not sure. You know, I'm compelled to bring it before the commission and the staff because my job is as arts coordinator for Las Vegas School District. This is what we do look at, and we try to be very careful about it. And so I had a responsibility that was inherent.
I don't question any of that. I guess what I was really getting at is when something seemingly that important, or could be that important, comes up, we could, as we are able, share that with staff ahead of time.
I would have. I didn't have time.
Commissioner Michichi.
I'd like to suggest something, whether we may be able to do it or not, but if it is that critical, if there are things there that are meant to be added to conditions, I might suggest we delay this hearing, allow the applicant to quickly peruse this while she's sitting here, see if she has any objection to following those conditions. If she has none, we can include them in the conditions. If she does, we can continue it.
Commissioner O'Donnell.
I'm sorry, I have no idea why I'm authorized to make these requirements of this applicant or any other applicant. If this is required by state law, I'd sure like to know that, and perhaps you could let us know since you work with it constantly. And if it is required by state law, is there an agency which causes the inspection?
It is for schools, for California schools, public schools. Certainly, I can't speak to privately owned schools. But since the word it was schools, and I thought this might be an advantage to someone opening a school and working with children. And it was not anywhere in the report.
Well, the question simply is, if you want to give it to her and let her peruse it and decide to use it, I have no objection to that. If, on the other hand, you intend to ask us to impose it as a condition, then we ought to just find that out. So that's really the question.
And
Other questions for the applicant? Thank you. I don't have any speaker cards on this item, so there's no need for rebuttal. I'm going to close the public hearing and turn to the commission for a discussion or a motion. I know this item was on consent, however, still, let's have a show of hands, those able to visit the site, and are there any disclosures or additional evidence that needs to be put on the record? Seeing none. Commissioner Telesfori, why don't you start us off and tell us what you'd like to do with that list?
Like not to cause a lot of trouble, I think. I'd like to make it, so I'm going to, I don't know. I mean, I would, if I could assume that the staff might work with the applicant, that she would have a chance to peruse her materials, and in using this as a standard, then I would be happy just to hand it over to you to see that happens. I would, I don't know, I don't want to, I'd like to hear from the rest of my commissioners. Maybe they don't
I'm
think
looking
it's
for
important.
discussion or a motion from anyone. Commissioner McChichy.
Well, it's somewhat consistent with what Commissioner O'Donnell was relating to. If this is a requirement of the California state for public schools, I'm not sure. I don't know if it is for private schools. The question is, should it be, and where can we go with it?
It's obviously something we can all learn from. We probably might want to just submit it to staff and let staff decide what's legally required and what isn't. Commissioner O'Donnell may have a motion.
Let me make a motion that a copy of this be afforded to the applicant so that she'll be aware of it, and she can determine either with counsel if she needs it, or staff if she wants, although I don't know why staff would be particularly qualified for that. But in any event, you'll have called it to her attention. She'll have an opportunity to determine what the law requires and also what good practice requires.
Okay.
So my motion would be that we simply provide her with a copy of those matters you're concerned about so she can give good faith consideration to them.
In lieu of time and expertise and all of that, I would have to agree, because it doesn't seem like there's a place to put this tonight. But if we could at least do that, I will have felt that I met my responsibility.
Commissioner O'Donnell, I understand what you just said and what you just did. Could the motion be more comprehensive to the staff report in terms of what's needed? Can we approve this with what you just said as a condition? And if so, would you make that kind of a motion?
Yes, all right. The motion would be that we approve the application, subject, however, to the submittal of the reports and data the Commissioner Telesfori has just cited, so that they would be given to the applicant for her good faith consideration of their applicability, and that would be the motion.
Also.
And that we would find that the project is categorically exempt pursuant to Section 15301 of the California Environmental Quality Act. We'd make the findings as required by Section 2920-190 of the Town Code for a conditional use permit, which I'll get to in a moment, and that we approve the conditional use permit. And as I recall, the conditions for the use permit are a public necessity or convenience, and in this particular case, it would be, if anybody can find that for me. Does anybody have that requirements? The proposed uses are desirable to the public convenience and welfare. The proposed uses will not impair the integrity and character of the zone, and that it is a permitted use, and the proposed uses would not be detrimental to public health, safety, or general welfare in the conditions are placed on the permit to mitigate any potential impacts, and the proposed use of the property are in harmony with the various elements or objectives of the general plan and the purposes of the town code. That would be the motion.
Thank you. Do
Okay.
we have a second?
I'll second that
Telesfori.
motion. Thank you, and thank you for help with getting that in there. Appreciate it.
Is there any discussion? Seeing none, I'm going to call the question. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes 6-0. Mr. Korb, are there appeal rights?
There are, and also let me just add for the record that the information referred to in the condition cited by Commissioner Telesfori is the material that she was referring to earlier and will be submitted to staff and made part of the record of this proceeding. Anyone dissatisfied with the decision of the Planning Commission may appeal the decision to the Town Council. An appeal must be filed within 10 days. It must be filed upstairs in the clerk department. There are, I should say, fees for filing an appeal.
Thank you. Our next new public hearing, item 4 on tonight's agenda, is 16771 Frank Avenue, subdivision application M08003, architecture and site application S08043 for lot number 1, and architecture and site application S08044 for lot number 2. This application requests approval to demolish an existing single-family residence, subdivide a 0.5 acre parcel into 2 lots, and construct 2 new single-family residences on property zoned R18. This is APN 529-15021. Property owner and applicant is Howell and McNeil Development, LLC. Ms. Hamilton, do we have our staff report?
Good evening, Commissioners, again. The property is located on the north side of Frank Avenue, approximately 350 feet northwest of Los Gatos Boulevard, and is zoned R18, which is single-family residential, 8,000 square foot lot minimum. All of these surrounding properties contain single-family residences. The applicant is proposing to demolish the existing single-family residence, divide the property into 2 parcels, and construct 2 new single-family residences. The proposed parcel sizes are compatible with the existing parcels in the immediate neighborhood, and they do comply with the general plan and zoning regulations. Although the subdivision and the proposed residence may be approved by the Development Review Committee, staff is referring the project to the Planning Commission because the proposed residence would create the largest homes in the immediate neighborhood. At 2,979 square feet, the residence proposed on Parcel 1 would create the largest home in the immediate neighborhood in terms of square footage. The residence proposed on Parcel 2 would create the 3rd largest home by square footage if the proposed residence on Parcel 1 was approved. At an FAR of 0.31, the proposed residence on Parcel 1 would create the 2nd largest home in the immediate neighborhood in terms of FAR. At an FAR of 0.32, the proposed residence on Parcel 2 would create one of the largest homes in terms of FAR. There are 2 existing homes with an FAR of 0.32. The neighborhood is a mix of 1- and 2-story homes. The 2-story residence is proposed adjacent to a partial 2-story home to the west, and the 2nd story is set back substantially from the 1st story at the front elevation. That creates a mass and scale that is compatible with the neighborhood. The proposed 1-story residence is sympathetic to the 1-story residence to the east. Although the proposed square footage of Parcel 1 and the proposed FAR of Parcel 2 would be larger than the other residences in the immediate neighborhood, the proposed residences are well designed and will not impact the character of the neighborhood in terms of its scale and mass. The town received 1 public comment, which is included in your staff report, and we have received 2 additional public comments which were given to you just before the start of the meeting and are available here if anyone needs a copy. There was no desk item prepared for the 2 additional public comments as they were given to us 10 minutes before the meeting. Both the comment prepared and given to you in the staff report and one of the comments given to you this evening address the issue of the 2-story home in terms of privacy and views. The public comment received from the Wagners and included in the staff report specifically specifically speak to the privacy and view impacts from Parcel 1, which is the two-story residence. The Wagners have a two-story residence themselves, and they also have a garage that's located directly behind that first parcel. The Wagners' residence is more than 50 feet from Parcel 1's rear property line, and the structure is approximately 70 feet from the proposed two-story structure on Parcel 1. The applicant did meet with Ms. Wagner and expressed willingness to explore options to address her concerns. Staff will allow the applicant to speak about those options. And then the third public comment was in regards to paving the former Augustine Avenue, which is currently an ingress-egress easement. This concludes staff's presentation, and I am available for any questions.
Thank you. Commissioners, any questions for staff? Commissioner Michichi.
Yeah, on drawing 4, the house list is 16791. What's the address to the one? Is that the address to the right of the address there, or to the left of the address?
Both of those structures are at that address.
Oh, there's 2 lots?
It's a wide lot.
So, okay, so.
No, 16791 Frank Avenue is to the left of the proposed subdivision. And those 2 structures, you're looking at the elevations, correct?
I'm looking at the
Sheet 4.
Yeah.
Yeah, both those structures are on the same property. The Augustine...
2 separate residences?
No.
Oh,
They are connected. It doesn't show between those 2 structures.
Oh, okay.
But there is a small connection.
All right. I'm sorry. I thought there were 2 residents when I went by there.
Other questions for staff? Commissioner Bourgeois.
Didn't that look like 2 either?
I have a question about Augustine Avenue, and was there any discussion in the process about paving that, and what is the proposed use for that? I mean, I know there's an easement being given over. Could you just explain that situation to me a little better?
Augustine Avenue was a right-of-way for access between Frank and Farley, and it was recently abandoned. The northern portion has already been completely abandoned. The southern part has been abandoned, and they're creating an ingress-egress easement for the property with an Augustine Avenue address that's in the middle of Farley and Frank. So Augustine Avenue will no longer be a street, but there will be an ingress-egress easement for Augustine Avenue, the property with that address, to access their property.
So that'll basically become a flag lot
Yes, by definition.
Yeah. And was there any discussion about this applicant paving that street?
I will refer that question to the applicant.
Thank you.
Other questions? Seeing none, I'll open the public hearing and will shortly call the applicant, who will have up to 5 minutes to speak. After any other public members speak, the applicant may then have 3 minutes for rebuttal. If there are members of the public who wish to speak on this matter after the applicant, please turn in a speaker card. You will each have up to 3 minutes to speak. I now call the applicant, Mr. Howell, and/or Mr. McNeil, and/or who else? Mr. Spalding.
Good evening. My name is Gregory Howell. I live on Glen Ridge Avenue. My partner, Tim McNeil, is here, and he lives on Clearview Avenue. Both of us live in Los Gatos. We have brought forth a project to you this evening that we've spent a lot of time with staff looking at the neighborhood and trying to design homes that we felt were compatible with the neighborhood. The town architect has agreed that these homes are compatible with the neighborhood, and we're excited to open the debate about what is best for this property. I won't take up any more of your time. I'll just open it up to questions you may have of us, and specifically regarding architecture, I'll refer to our architect, Chris Spalding.
Are there questions for the applicant? Commissioner O'Donnell.
Commissioner Bourgeois asked a question that I was interested in too, and I think the idea was that you would tell us this street that has been abandoned, and now there's discussion of making, I guess, a portion of it as an easement to a house located in the middle of the abandoned street. Could you tell us what you know about that, and The owner of that house, I think, has stated that you as a developer, had agreed to pave that easement. Could you respond to that?
Yes, there was kind of two parts to this project. One was the abandonment of Augustine and then the subdivision of the property on Frank. And some of the neighbors here know a little bit more of the history than we do. We came into this after most of Augustine had already been abandoned to the various neighbors. The property we purchased, for my understanding, did not participate in the abandonment because she could not afford to pay for the process to do that. But again, the neighbors can speak to that. We then came into a property that had been roughly 3/4 abandoned, 1/4 not abandoned, and the town had asked us to clean up that abandonment and make it all kind of the same, not any of the responsibility of the town. It would no longer be a town street. So we cleaned that up and did that. In the process, we met with the neighbors. Obviously, they had questions. Everybody wants to make sure they understand all the issues. We certainly agreed to pave the street, to do landscaping, and to make that look more compatible with the rest of the neighborhood. It's been run down, it's been neglected, and it needs some work.
Was the answer yes?
Yes.
Thank you. Other questions for the applicant? Commissioner Bourgeois.
Thank you. I have a question about lot number 1. I do tend to agree with the consulting architect. I think the design is very compatible. I would like to hear a little maybe rationale about the height. There are several 2-story homes on the street. This one's a couple feet taller than the tallest on the street. I'm just wondering if there was any consideration or a specific reason for that height. And the reason I'm concerned about it is when you enter, that's Frank from Los Gatos Boulevard, especially when you take the trees out that are going to be removed, that roof line was pretty visible coming in. And so I'm just wondering if I can get some justification for the 2 feet higher than the rest of the neighborhood.
Chris Spalding, architect from Berkeley. It's a couple of feet higher, I think probably since we set the second story back to the rear of the parcel, and the parcel slopes to the rear, we've got a couple of feet of slope towards the rear. So I'm measuring that height limit to the grade at the very back of the house. So that's most of that extra height. If you were to measure it from the Frank side, it would be 2 feet shorter, or 18 inches shorter.
Thank you.
Commissioner Sayoc.
Actually, Mr. Spalding, I'm sorry, I didn't quite understand that. Could you explain it one more time? So can you explain it to me again?
If you're looking at the houses from the street, measuring their height from the street, this house would be shorter because it's measured from the rear where the grade is sloped down. So we're measuring it at the highest point, which is at the back, which is lower grade than at the front.
Okay. And
so the apparent height from Frank would be shorter.
I see. And I actually do have one more architecture question for you. In terms of, to help me visually, as I was circling the neighborhood and I came around Frank to come back to Los Gatos Boulevard, I noticed there were 2 homes on Placer Oaks. Is this the same architecture so that would give me an indication of what it would look like on Frank?
Well, they're similar in that one's a 1-story and one's a 2-story.
But the elevation, to me at least, appeared to be the same. Would you concur?
No, because the one on Placer Oaks, the 2-story, is the second-story mass is much closer to the front of the house. This one's got 25 feet of the second-story mass is 25 feet further back than the front of the house.
Okay.
Set much further back.
And what about Lot 2 with the one-story home?
It's also Lot 1 is also a narrower house than that one on Placer Oaks.
Okay.
Lot 1 is a wider house than that one on Placer Oaks. That one on Placer Oaks, the garage sticks way forward.
Okay.
And this one, the lot's wider, so the garage could sit, doesn't stick forward from.
Okay. And then my last question for either of you. There are 2 letters that came forward from neighbors about privacy, and I was curious if you had a chance to talk with either of those neighbors. They live at 15751 Augustine as well as 16750 Farley. And the reason why I ask is because they are concerned about the privacy by placing the second story in the rear. And so I'd like to hear your thoughts on, are there ways to mitigate those concerns?
He's the one that talked to the neighbors, but as far as the issue to the house in the rear, if you've gone out there and looked, there's from our rear bedroom window, it's 80. We're 34 feet from our property line, and there are another 50 feet, so they're 84 feet apart. There's a garage between. There's some existing trees. That house is offset to the side. Didn't seem to me that there would be a privacy issue, but if there was, we could plant another tree there. And then I don't know about that one on Augustine. I don't think that was a privacy issue. I thought a view issue. Yeah.
Along those lines, did you, Mr. Spaulding, or the other applicants have a chance to talk to Mr. or Mrs. Cornwell?
I didn't, but he's the one talking to the neighbors.
The letter came in 10 minutes before the hearing. I have spoken with them on and off over the course of this subdivision. This is the first time I've heard that they had issues regarding the second story, as well as staff. This is the first time they heard was 10 minutes ago. I did meet with Melissa Wagner a couple of days ago out there to look specifically at her property and her concerns.
My concern is the Cornwells. You have spoken to them previously?
Yes, we
have.
have.
And in those discussions, the concerns that are being raised tonight did not come up?
No.
Then, so that you understand my question or my concern so that it can be addressed, the one-story house is not a problem for me. It seems fine and compatible with the neighborhood. The two-story house blots out the hillside and looks like a very imposing wall, not only from Augustine but also from the Cromwell house. I walked Augustine and the Cromwell property today and was approached by Mrs. Cromwell and said, I cannot discuss this with you, but if you want to put the concerns in writing. She said she had to work and could not attend. Her husband could not attend, but they were very concerned about things. I can't explain why they hadn't conveyed that to you previously, but the letter that they sent, and it's their words, that whether or not they're exaggerated, the immense height of the house completely walls off any view of the mountains. I agree with that. I mean, standing in their driveway on their porch, the hills that I can see through the story poles will not be there when the house is built. We will feel hemmed in. Could we move the bulk of the second story toward Frank? It might afford some relief from impending claustrophobia. This will provide an immense wall for us to enjoy, and so it's an emotional letter, and naturally, you have to pay attention to it. Sorry they hadn't talked to you about it previously, but just tell me about the necessity to have a two-story, or to have it as tall as it is, or because it does really put them at a disadvantage. And we've spoken before about representing existing people versus representing non-existent future people. These two people are very concerned, and there is language on view sheds, And there is language in the general plan to protect and preserve, and these two folks are feeling pretty upset. Now, that may be mitigated in the future, perhaps, but right now, just tell me the necessity for a two-story.
I'm going to handle a couple. I'll let Chris handle the two-story side of it, but I've been doing this a long time, and my general experience is when someone has those concerns, when they get in touch with you right away when the story poles go up. And these story poles have been up for weeks and weeks and weeks. The fact of the matter is I've been in that neighborhood, I've met with them, and they've never raised those issues to me. The fact that it came in 10 minutes before the meeting leads me to believe that perhaps there's other things going on. I can't address it. If they're here tonight, I'd be happy to listen to their comments specifically about what they're concerned with. And regarding blocking their view of the hillside, I would respectfully disagree with that. What we did here is we looked at a neighborhood that has two-story and one-story homes, close to 50-50, and we designed what would not change the mix of that neighborhood. A single story on one where we have single stories all to the right, a two-story on the other lot which has 3 two-stories surrounding it. So I feel that this two-story fits in better with the neighborhood than a one-story, because we would be changing the mix on this lot and that immediate neighborhood by putting in one-story there, because there's already all 2 stories surrounding it.
There are other two-story houses in the neighborhood, and this house would be the largest of any house in the neighborhood.
Again,
So it's more than just looking like a two-story like other two-stories. It's a heck of a big two-story.
it would not be the largest in the neighborhood. It would be the largest how you guys define a neighborhood, which is very limited. There's a 4,000 square foot home going in right now being built. If you cross the street and go 4 over, on the other side, there's about a 4,000 square foot home going in right now being built. I can cite another home on Frank that's 3,600 feet that was built 2 years ago. But if you're looking at the immediate 2 homes to the right and 2 homes to the left, that is correct.
Well, however we guys define the neighborhood. I'm just sharing with you my concern for the Cromwells, and my question is reasonably vague. Is there anything you can do for their seemingly significant concerns? And it goes to the necessity for two-story, and it goes back to the largest house in the neighborhood.
Chris Spalding again. This lot's a little bit difficult because of all the trees, and we were trying to save the significant trees in the lot, which in order to do so, you had to give up a lot of the building envelope that this lot would normally have. So if the 20-inch oak and the double redwood that we were saving were to come out, which I don't think is a good idea, but that would allow us to have more square footage on the lower level and reduce the second story. The house now does not have extra high plates. It only has a 4 and 12 pitch roof. There's nothing that, it's not an extraordinarily tall house as a two-story.
I appreciate what you're saying about the trees.
That it's still a two-story, and I can't really move the bulk of it forward far enough to get it out of their view because of that redwood tree. There's just not that much square footage at the front of the house, and it would detract from the attractiveness of the house from Frank Avenue. So.
All right. Thank you, Chris. Commissioner Telesfori.
Along that line, Chris, thank you very much. I wanted to check something with you. I have the lot 1 at 27.6. Is that correct?
The height? Yes.
Yes. And the house next door to it is 24 feet?
Lot, the one story?
No, it's 16791, Frank.
Oh, you're looking at streetscape?
Yes.
Yeah, that's a guess, more plus or minus.
Okay, so we're about 3 feet 6 inches, not 2. So my question to you is, what is there a possibility of lowering the house to 2 feet lower? It would certainly affect the volume and the,
I could
and perhaps
lower it
mitigate the
about,
concern of the neighbor. Pardon me?
I could lower it maybe 6 inches. The thing that we often do to lower a house like this is to dig it into the ground so that from the first floor to the grade is less, but we can't do that because of the trees.
Okay, so how lowering that by 2 feet, would it change the whole design? Would it be a whole redesign for you, or what?
Yeah, the only way we would be able to do that would be a complete redesign, yeah.
Is that like a big thing, or would it
Yeah,
be a
that's a fairly big
modification?
thing.
Well, I mean, I understand it's work, but it could be modified?
We'd have to redesign it completely to get 2 feet out of it, yeah.
Okay.
It's not, there's nothing we could just easily manipulate to get that much height.
All right, and then on Lot 2, you're at 19 feet there, and the house next door to it is 14.6, is that correct? So that's like 5.5 feet difference in height?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Michichi?
Just to follow up on that one, you said previously that the lot grade's down, so your 27 feet was measured from the furthest,
The back.
lowest point.
Yeah.
Was that 24-foot point measured from the same point?
No, that was
Measured from the front?
That was measuring it from the front.
Okay, and how far down did the grade bring it? What was the delta from the front?
The front is 3. We have about an 18-inch height difference from the front to the rear.
Okay, so your 27 versus the 24 is really about 1.5 feet, then, we're saying, is that correct? Relative from the same plane,
Yeah.
is that correct? Okay, thank you.
Other questions for the applicants? Thank you very much. I have 4 speaker cards. And after these speakers have spoken, the applicant will get 3 minutes for rebuttal. Margaret Kavami? Did I say that correctly?
Almost. Kwame. I live at 16816 Frank Avenue on the south side of Frank Avenue. And I'm just concerned that in a neighborhood that has a history of, I guess, years back being chicken ranches that have already been divided, many of the even larger lots on our street have been previously divided. Some of the homes that have been there for 30, 40, 50 years used to be on even larger lots. And I'm just concerned about a precedent being set for continually dividing these larger old lots. It will really change the nature of the neighborhood. We have seen that happen already on Placer Oaks. So that's my concern in a neighborhood with beautiful old trees and in some cases large backyards reminiscent of the old orchards and chicken ranches, that it's turning more into a new subdivision look, which is not what some of us were looking for when we purchased homes even in the last 10 years. And that's my concern.
Any questions for the speaker? Well, I have one, and I'll begin it with, did you know? Did you know that it's not so much a precedent setting as a lawful allowance as to what properties could be subdivided? This wouldn't be precedent setting. Simply, if lots are large enough, they can be divided according to what the ordinances allow. So it may happen elsewhere if the lots are large enough.
I understand that. It's the nature of the neighborhood and the look of the neighborhood with increasingly larger and larger homes.
The neighborhood is indeed in transition. I've been out there in many cases over 4 years, and things are changing out there. Hopefully more for the better. Thank you.
Thank you.
Kimberly Leonard?
I'm Kimberly Leonard, and I live at 16728 Farley Road, which is adjacent to the property behind. And so I'm actually here today. You're going to have to forgive my ignorance in this process because I've never done this before. We saw the storyboards a couple of weeks ago. We came back. We were out of town. Came back, saw the storyboards, which I didn't even know they were called storyboards. I called them orange construction fences, and didn't know exactly what was going on. Talked to some of the neighbors, and they said, "Oh yeah, that's a building." So we came down to the planning department. Our planner was not in it that day. I spent 2 hours looking over the plans, and this is the first time I've ever looked at plans before either. So spent 2 hours looking over the plans. About halfway through, I finally realized that there was actually going to be 2 houses. So starting from the beginning there, we were surprised that there were going to be 2 houses on a lot where currently there's a very small home. This property is, I actually have some photos. Can I show those? Is there any way to do that? I heard there was. So this property is behind my property. So if I am looking at my house from the street, to the right is where this property is. If I look inside of my daughter's bedroom window, I can see orange construction fences or storyboards. So I have a problem with that. I don't have a problem with construction, and I don't have a problem with these houses going up. I just think that there needs to be some allowance or some considerations made to make sure that there aren't people that are able to look in my daughter's window. I do have a nice deck outside. We have a very small home, and we spend a lot of our time outside, as a lot of people do in Los Gatos. And we entertain outside, and from what it looks like to me from where the storyboards are, is that people will be able to look into our yard, particularly from the 2-story lot. So, how do I do this? So this way? So it's kind of hard to see because it's dark. Yeah, here's our trampoline, which is not permanent, obviously.
Take the microphone with you, please.
Oh, okay. Actually, you guys can't see it very well. So this is standing outside of my daughter's bedroom, looking over the fence, and right in here is where you can see the orange construction. I don't know if you guys can see that. Okay, this is a picture looking towards the house. In the corner here is where you can see the new development. Should I go on? I have 10 pictures, and I can just pass them around. Okay.
Questions for the speaker? Commissioner Bourgeois?
Thank you for coming here today and giving us your concerns. I just want to make sure I'm understanding where you're located, because I've spent some time on Farley and on Frank and trying to get as many views into the project site as I can. So when you say you're directly behind, there's a newer home that's on Augustine Avenue. Is that your home?
No, I'm
You're
actually
one to the
not
left?
I'm actually not directly behind.
Okay.
So, okay, so let's see. So I am right here. What is that right? 24. So I'm right here.
So you're the third one down from Augustine.
Yeah, and my house is set back on the back of the lot. And we have windows here and here. And then there's the proposed building is in this area.
Thank you.
Other question is Commissioner Machici, did you have your hand up?
No, I was going to ask this, let me ask it anyway. About how far would you say that is from there? You probably can measure that. That's the 2-story you're drawing in? Oh, that's the single story. All right, so about how far is that while he's up there? Can you ask him? So you can answer.
About how
you.
far is that?
Well, from our one story to the corner is probably about 25 feet, and then I don't know how far your house is.
It's not that far. We are about, I would say, 5 to 8 feet from the rear of our property, our houses. We have no backyard.
I'm thinking that the distance from the two-story house to your house is about 75 feet.
It's hard to tell, but it could be.
I think that's an indication from staff. Ms. Savage?
That is a correct approximation.
Okay, thank you. Other questions for the speaker? Thank you very much. Melissa Wagner?
Hi, I'm Melissa Wagner, and I live at 16750 Farley Road. Some of you may remember me from my notorious appeal for a two-story. In my letter, like I said, we had no other options. In fact, the commission had suggested at the time we were proposing our two-story of doing a basement level, which we also looked at doing, but because of the property dispute on one side of us and the large trees, we were unable to do that. So one of my questions would be whether the commission still does suggest that for developers to avoid two stories in neighborhoods. Another question, well, I have a comment about my neighbor George Cornwell. As far as I know, the last time Mr. Howell and Cornwell spoke was when we were all, about a year ago, going over the easement issue on Augustine. We were also given an easement by Mr. Howell to access the back of our property because we have a garage back there. So there has been no recent discussion, because I think it kind of got played out in the hearing today, that Cornwell had a meeting with Mr. Howell and didn't bring up the two-story, but the fact is they haven't spoken for probably close to a year. And the Cornwells are very busy, so they could not be here, and last minute we're trying to get their feelings heard. He did call me this afternoon and asked me if I would come, and he asked me to go ahead and express his concerns about paving the road, so that's how I know this. And then my other question is, my other concern is pushing that second story all the way to the back of property. I understand this is a new ordinance where they want the second story set back from the street, and it is an ordinance that makes sense. However, 25 feet just seems really excessive to push the second story back so that it's interfering with the neighbor's 25 feet. It seems like there's a compromise in the middle there where it can be set back, 5 to 10 feet. I think. Oh, another important thing. When I met with Mr. Howell the other day out at the property, and when we talked on the phone, he had expressed how he was having a hard time selling a two-story on Placer Oaks, and it really was his desire to do 2 one-stories, but there was a redwood tree that he didn't think the commission would allow him to remove, and if they did allow him to remove that redwood tree, then he could do a single-story home, and that's what he preferred to do. At least that's what he expressed to me twice. Okay.
So let's see if there's any questions. Questions for the speaker? Commissioner Bourgeois.
Could you just point on the map exactly where your property is?
Yes. My property is right here.
Ms. Wagner, when you say that the applicant may not have spoken to Mr. Cromwell for over a year, what exactly is the significance of that?
Oh, it just sounded like, well, why haven't you had discussions with Mr. Cornwell, but he didn't bring up the two-story? Well, that's because the discussions with Mr. Cornwell happened before there was even a two-story drawn out. It was discussions that we had about a year ago with Kevin Rouhani regarding giving our property and the Cornwell's property an easement on Augustine. There have been no recent discussions where the Cornwells decided not to bring up the two-story because, you know.
I was just thinking whether it was a year ago or a day ago, if they had brought those issues up, the time wouldn't matter. I wouldn't see that as prejudicial.
No, right. I'm just saying that there wasn't a recent conversation where they just failed to bring it up. That's
Okay.
all I was expressing.
Thank you.
Okay.
Gary Johnson.
Hello. I'm the guy that lives on the other side of Augustine. I'm in lot number 98 there.
Can you point on the map?
Sure. I'm this guy.
Thank you.
It sounds to me like a number of you have been out there recently, so you've seen the lay of the land. Of the people who have spoken here tonight, I've probably lived there the longest. I've lived at 16791 Frank since 1978, and I've watched the neighborhood in transition. And to tell you the truth, I'm not really that concerned about the neighborhood in transition, although whatever you heard about those storyboards, I guess you call them, or the orange stuff being up for a long time, it hasn't been up that long. It's been up a couple of weeks, maybe 3. We were quite surprised how big that thing got right next to the fence also. But, and probably of all of the people who have spoken here tonight, I should be the one that is most concerned about my privacy looking down onto my lot and my bedroom right across that dirt road. There's nothing in the way, a couple of trees along the edge there. A couple of trees along the edge right here. But my house sits here, as you probably know. I'm a little bit concerned about the height, but I'm sure you'll all work that out. I'm not upset about the height. I'm upset about the road. I'm upset about the easement onto my property, a new surprise that pops up tonight about the road being paved. He and I have talked recently. We talked maybe 2 weeks ago. We've talked a couple of times in the middle there. And I've been told on a number of occasions that nothing as far as my lot costing me any money, having to put any new sewers, new gutters, anything like that is going to change for me. And I'm a little bit shocked when I start hearing about that road being paved. And what is that going to do to me? What is it going to do to my lot? Those of you who are out there see that I have a fence up along that side, and I was told that I could do that when we did the second part of the abandonment of that road. As it turns out, this abandonment business happened 3 years ago, 3 or 4 years ago. We were auspiciously omitted from being invited to this hearing for that abandonment when they abandoned the back part of Augustine that went all the way through to Farley, and all of a sudden we were sitting there with the only egress and egress for Mr. Cromwell, who is in the middle there. I came down here and had a reasonably lengthy and heated discussion with the Planning Commission at that point in time. My wife has got all of the records. Can I keep talking?
You can summarize, please.
And it turns out that now I've got the easement. And it sounds like, I'm not sure, I have a number of questions about this because it's the first time I've seen the plans. How much of my property is going to be taken over by this road? The paving is a complete surprise to me. How much am I going to get pushed off into my property?
Explain to us, please, your concern about the paving. Why is that a bad thing?
Because well, first of all, am I going to get charged anything for the paving? Number one, and number two, is part of my property going to be which is now not being used, is part of my property going to be used for this new paved road?
Let's see if we can find out.
I just saw the plans up there on the wall an hour and a half ago.
It's Mr. Johnson, right?
I am.
Ms. Savage, Mr. Johnson is concerned that if this road is paved, he may be charged for it?
If it was paved on condition that the applicant was going to pave it, he would not be charged for it.
And he's concerned that the paving might encroach on his existing property?
working with the abandonment of Augustine Avenue, a portion of the ingress-egress easement is on his property.
Does that mean that's a road that the people who live there currently drive over anyway?
Correct.
Okay.
I can't tell by the plans if the paving isn't going to move over anywhere from where they're driving through now. I'm not very concerned. But from what I can see up there, and I'm not smart enough to be able to read these plans, it looks like that it's significantly wider, and it's going to encroach on where I actually have fences and buildings right now.
Thank you. I will address those issues when it comes to commission. Thank you. Mr. Bill Shalou? Shalou? Thank you.
Hi. So I actually have, maybe it's just a basic question about the design plans that I couldn't get answered today. So am I allowed to address the applicants, or, okay. Then I can address you guys as being knowledgeable about the plans.
You can give the commission a question if we need to refer it to staff.
Okay. So my question is not a matter of privacy. First of all, I'm Bill Shalou at 16742 Farley Road. And I'll show you where I am. I am here in lot 23, right there. So my question is, I want to make sure that the fence that is right here and this lot line, there's going to be no adjustment of that in the plans.
Thank you. Do we anticipate any adjustment to that lot line?
That rear lot line is not being adjusted.
Okay, and how about the fence?
How about the fence?
There was some conversation between the applicant and the property owner of the parcel directly behind the Wagners about moving the existing fence, which is, according to the survey, not on the property line currently. They were talking about putting it on the property line.
Thank you.
So on the property line, so you're using the survey that was done here to determine the property line?
That is the survey that would be used.
Pardon me?
That is the survey that would be used.
Okay. Okay. Okay, I guess the reason for my concern is right now there is a large two-story structure here, which is, 16 feet away from all of our bedroom windows, and there is a garage right here, and there are certain setbacks here. My concern is that no other structure or this structure here does not become a rental unit or a secondary residence for somebody and further hem in this. So if this fence was moved, I guess my question is, would that allow any further easements or building rights for this particular strip of land?
Ms. Savage?
The fence is currently in the required setback, so moving the fence would not change any of the requirements for that property.
Any of the requirements, okay. Would not afford any ability to develop
it would not
that
add
into
to their
a second
ability.
dwelling?
The ability to do a secondary dwelling unit is not related to the fence. And
Okay.
moving the fence does not change the property lines.
And so it's related to the property line?
Correct.
Okay. And R18, the one in R18 means one resident? Okay, thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Just as a matter of law, any single-family residential lot is allowed a second unit, residential unit, if the lot can accommodate it physically. I don't know one way or another whether this lot can accommodate it, but R1 doesn't necessarily mean you can't have a second unit on the lot. It just means that you can have one if the lot is configured such that it would accommodate a second unit.
Thank you. I have no other speaker cards, so I'm going to turn to the applicant for rebuttal.
Addressing Augustine Avenue, I have the original survey from, and this is the existing access to the Cromwell's property, and the civil engineer, who's not here, but he located the new roadway exactly in the same spot as the existing. So it's not encroaching on your parcel any more than the existing roadway. He set it in the same spot. So if they can drive in that driveway now, then
Mr. Spalding, to us.
Okay, yeah. If the Cromwells can access that driveway, then the new road is in the same spot and won't affect him. I don't know that I should address their ability to build anything in that strange flag of Lot 97.
I wouldn't.
There was one thing I wanted to talk about. We haven't come up yet, but in the town architects report from Cannon Design Group, they talked about the window trim, and it's a condition of approval. And in the architect's report, it says that the window trim material is not called out on the drawings, and it should be wood or painted high-density foam, preferable to stucco over foam. And I didn't like either of those suggestions, so what we did instead on sheet 3, we have a detail of what we're going to do to make the windows look nice, and that is all our windows on both houses will be a recessed detail with a prominent sill made out of cast stone or tile. So that's what we would like to do, rather than a foam trim or a stucco trim or a painted wood trim.
Let me check with staff on what you just said, please. Ms. Savage?
The plans show that the sill will be cast stone and that the framing of the window is wood, but the trim is not called out, and that may just be a miscommunication on that detail.
That's because there is no trim. It's the window's recessed so that it forms a shadow line instead of having a piece of wood that's painted there. It's a nice detail.
Mr. Cannon made a number of other suggestions.
And we did all the others.
Incorporated all of those? Thank you. Have you completed?
I'm done, yes.
Do we have questions for the applicant? Commissioner Telesforian.
Thank you. So we heard a lot of, I guess, worries tonight from neighbors in the area about, windows looking into yards, et cetera, et cetera. Have you considered, or would you consider obscuring some of the glass? And I don't know which of the windows look into which. They're partially or.
I think the only one that really expressed concern over privacy was
Ms. Leonard.
the Wagners in Lot 97.
Also Ms. Leonard, I think.
Number 24. Number 24 would be affected by, our two-story house will be blocked. The windows from the two-story house will be blocked mostly from view by the roof line of the one-story house from that lot, except perhaps the master bathroom window, which, I think the people in the new house in the master bath would be more concerned about their privacy than vice versa.
Right. So obscured glass might be an answer, because it doesn't have to be totally obscured. You could etch a design in it that would allow some, clear, but the majority of it would be obscured, so it might solve both parties' issues.
Well, there's window coverings.
There are,
Yeah.
or not.
Well,
I can't be sure. I can't condition that someone put a window covering in.
Anti-exhibitionist.
I don't know. I don't know who's going to buy it.
Yes, it's possible we could do obscure glass in the master bath.
Mr. Spaulding, it's been suggested that if in fact the commission was agreeable to sacrificing the redwood, that you might have a preference on doing a one-story. I'm not saying we are or we aren't, but is that an accurate assessment?
It would be the redwood and the 20-inch oak.
That's an accurate assessment?
Yeah.
That if those trees were to come down, you would...
We could do I don't know if it's his preference, but
wasn't so much as it could do as it was a stated preference. Would you have a preference to do that?
Personally, it's not my preference, but if you're asking me could I do a one-story on this lot, the answer would be yes, but the redwood and the oak would have to come out.
All right, thank you. Did you want to comment on that, sir?
What Melissa said was accurate when we met with her, that if we could design a one-story home here, we would be open to that. But we felt that our past experience with the town, that oak trees and redwoods were usually not allowed to go, so we designed the homes around the trees.
Yeah. Trees are sacred, and so are people.
Yeah, agreed.
So we'll talk about it. Right. Other questions for Commissioner Bourgeois?
Well, to that point, I mean, obviously, you can design a one-story house and still save those trees, but it's going to be considerably smaller. I mean, is there some threshold that you're designing to and trying to meet, so that that's not a compromise that's acceptable to you? I mean, that's what. I mean, obviously, you could put a home there, a one-story home, but obviously, it's not meeting some square footage threshold for you. So.
Well, in my opinion, if we built a one-story that would be that small, it would be functionally obsolete once we built it, and the people that bought it, the first thing they would do, they'd be down here petitioning for a tear down of that home, and that just doesn't seem very green to me. I guarantee you that's what would happen. We'd be building a home that would be torn down within a matter of 10 years.
Do you know what that number would be? I mean, do you know?
We haven't. Chris, do you know what that?
I mean, do you know what the second floor of the existing home is? I mean, let's just take that away. And
1,100 feet, I think.
1,100. So 29 minus 11. So.
Yeah, the first floor on this house is 1,800 square feet.
Okay.
Yeah.
Commissioner Telesfori.
Along that line as well, to one of you, would you? It was also brought up tonight. Would you consider a basement?
It's the tree issues.
Again, that's the trees, because if we excavate down, you cut all those roots and it'll kill the trees. So.
Okay, can you lose one tree and not another, and get a reasonable development?
Possibly.
So you could lose the redwood?
Actually, probably I haven't really considered that. Yeah, probably the redwood would give more space to excavate, yeah.
And then you would get a reasonable amount of development. Thank you.
Commissioner Michichi.
One of you challenged the statement that the view wasn't as blocked as had been indicated. Could you elaborate on that?
You mean when I was talking about the Wagners?
One of the applicants complained that they were losing the view of the hill
totally.
You challenged that, I believe.
Well, the one that the letter about losing the view of the hills, I think, was the Cromwells. That would be lot 96.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't challenge that this house would block some of their views, no, but the only thing I would say to that is that currently there's a bunch of trees there that block the view in the current situation, and those trees, some of those are coming out, being replaced with the house.
You're saying the house isn't adding to the blockage?
I mean, it will somewhat because it's solid instead of broken up, but it wasn't a complete clear view. Yeah.
Okay.
Other questions for the applicant? Thank you. We have a late speaker card, and I'm going to exercise the chair's prerogative. I'm going to allow this speaker, but when I do so, I'll allow you 3 minutes to rebut anything you may hear. All right. Mr. Ray Davis.
Shit, if I knew it was Ray, I would have said no.
Yes, thank you. Sorry to be late. Girls basketball has a certain priority with me, unfortunately, for the public interest. However, isn't it wonderful, as opposed to Chicago politics, we have decent politics, at least at the planning commission level. Isn't it wonderful? I feel so good about it. All right? And I want to tell you, ladies and gentlemen of the Planning Commission, I don't know what went on before I got here, but these are the same dudes that did the number on Placer Oaks Drive, okay? In the same identical fashion. They took an existing lot that goes back to 20, 30 years, one little home, and they took the lot off, split it down the middle, and built two elongated Army-style barracks for homes, okay? And stole the view from the people that were adjacent to the property. Stole the view. And here they are planning to do the same damn thing. And I took a look at the layout today. 80-foot long home. What, 30-foot wide, something like that? Unbelievable. Another total ugliness in Los Gatos. The last time, if you will remember, you abdicated, in my opinion, your responsibility. You gave it to the staff to see that your concerns were carried out. And the staff did not do what you requested, okay? So here we have the same folks, a repeat.
Mr. Davis?
And you,
Mr. Davis, you were tardy, and I'm allowing you to speak, so I'm going to ask you to address your comments to the commission, please, and not to the applicant.
Well, I am. Of course. So, you know, you have a chance now, this identical proposal as the last one on Placer Oaks, just a block away, 2 blocks away. You can do the right thing now and make sure that Army-style barracks don't become the norm in the old, oversized lots that are cut in two to accommodate the dollar bill gang. This portion of the dollar bill gang that is taking over Los Gatos. Put a stop to it.
Thank you, Mr. Davis.
Happy to be here.
The applicant has 3 minutes to rebut anything that it heard if it wishes. Applicant declining, I'm going to close the public hearing and turn to the commission for discussion and/or motion. Let us begin with Commissioner Machici.
Oh, thank you. It's interesting, the last speaker mentioned the barrack look to these houses. When I was in the service, if I had barracks like that, I probably would have signed up again. But far from that. This application now is drawn a dilemma for me because when I first read it and looked at the homes and so forth, I really didn't see very much that I could discuss it. But I looked at the setbacks which being met. I looked at the height, which was 2 or 3 feet below the required maximum. I looked at the FAR, which was right below the amount. I looked at the comments from the architect, which were quite good, actually. So at this point, hearing what I have heard from from the public, I think I'm going to wait on comments or anything I may have done until I hear from the rest of my commissioners.
All right, Commissioner Sayoc?
Okay, I'm going to start off by the actual subdivision. I believe that the application before us, there's three components, and the first being the subdivision. While I empathize with one of our speakers' comments about the subdivision and changing the look of the surrounding area, I believe our chair had answered it correctly when he indicated that there are certain subdivision laws that we as the commission must abide by, and there are specifically 4 elements that we need to make a finding against. We need to be able to make a finding that one of those 4 exists before we deny it. So it's a bit unusual, whereas in the others, we would always have to find the opposite. And then the 4 findings, they say, just for the audience out there, that if it's not consistent with elements of the general plan, design and improvement of the proposed subdivision is not consistent, site is not physically suitable for the proposed development, or the site is not physically suitable for the proposed density. And I, for myself, cannot make any findings to deny the application. So specific to the subdivision portion, I would certainly vote to subdivide that and approve that portion of it. As specific to the architecture and site applications, I'm going to start with Lot 2 first. I believe that's the first story, the one-story home, and they're both taller than I had hoped for, but really the one story does not bother me as much as the first story. And I understand the issues of having a 2-story. The fact that it's a 2-story doesn't necessarily bother me, but I do think that there might be some ways by either reducing the height a couple more feet of the total home, redesigning the second story so that it's pushed forward a little bit, or maybe some more creative landscaping. I think that if we send it back, have the staff work with the applicant and the neighbors, we might find a suitable compromise so that 3 of the 4 speakers, their concerns about privacy, their concerns about view shed, their concerns about just feeling hemmed in could be addressed one more time, looked at by all parties involved, and see if we can find an alternate way to have this proposed site be developed on. So those are my comments, and I look forward to hearing what my fellow commissioners have to say.
Commissioner Bourgeois.
Thank you. I share Commissioner Sayak's concerns about lot number 1. I don't have any trouble with the subdivision, and I think the 1-story, I think they're both well-designed homes. I am concerned with the size and the mass and the scale of lot 1, and I, for one, would be willing to sacrifice those redwoods for a more sympathetic 1-story home that's more sympathetic to the neighbors in the immediate vicinity. So that's where my leaning is.
Are you leaning toward a motion, or do you want to come back to it?
Well, I've only really heard from one other commissioner at this point, because Commissioner Machichi wanted to hear from everyone else. So I would like to, let's get a general feel of the commission before we go for the motion.
Well, thank you. Since I think that we can work out, if it stays the 2-story in Lot 2, I think the obscure glass might answer some concerns. But since I did bring up if you would be willing to sacrifice the redwood tree, I would go along with that thinking, so that we could get this to be the 1-story and go with what your first thought was. I think that would be a much better. We don't have to worry about obscure glass. We don't have to worry about window coverings. We don't have to worry about mass and scale, feeling hemmed in, blah, 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 whatever else was on those letters from the neighbors. So that's where I would be going.
Commissioner O'Donnell?
I've heard 2 things. One is tear down the trees and we can get a single-story house in, and that'd be better. also heard we could obscure the glass in the bathroom and that would make things better. I think you have to weigh an oak tree and a redwood tree versus the height of this house. This house is higher in the rear because of the elevation of the lot, and it's the slope of the lot as near as I can tell. It is 75, 80 feet away from the neighbors who complain about the encroachment, the visual encroachment. I'm very sympathetic with that. That recently has happened to me. But when my neighbor did it, he discussed it with me, and I realized that they kind of had to do it. And as much as I disliked losing part of my view of the hillside, when you live in a city, sometimes that's what happens. So the applicant has said they can come down 6 inches on this. They can't come down 2 feet. I accept that. We can agree to tear down a couple trees and have them redo it. But I sure wonder if in the long run, tearing down an oak tree and a redwood tree is the right way to go. So I would certainly defer to hearing the rest of my commissioners feel about, I'm a little surprised that the commission seems so inclined to be willing to take down these 2 trees. Certainly that has not been my impression in the past. But if the commission really feels that's the way to go, I'm certainly open to listening to that. Personally, my preference would be that at most we go ahead and make the improvement the Commissioner Telesfor suggests, and that we drop the elevation by the amount the applicant said they can do, which is 6 inches. And other than that, we approve the project.
Well, I agree very, very strongly both ways. I find it compelling that the concern of the neighbors for being walled in, and I don't. Normally, that just wouldn't be enough of a good reason to deny a project, but with the applicant's willingness. And I assume that's without hardship, the applicant's willingness to look at it at an alternative project. I'd be inclined to likely support the loss of 2 trees for the quality of life of the residents. So I look for a motion. John? Or Commissioner McChichy, either way.
Yeah, just allow me to comment more since I've heard my other commissioners comment, and that is that, well, first of all, I'm reminded of the poem that says, only God can make a tree, and I think only God should take a tree down. So,
who makes people?
All right. I'd be very concerned about allowing the trees to go down and to enlarge the home, only because I've sat on this commission for 11, 12 years and stopped many a house from happening to save the tree. And to allow this would just be against what I've been for ever since I've been on this commission. Okay. I think it can go back and be looked at. I think these things can be remedied, as Commissioner O'Donnell has stated. So at this point, I'm going to make a motion to approve the applications as stated here. So I'm going to make a motion to approve subdivision application M08003, architecture and site application S08043 Lot 1, and architecture and site application S08044 Lot 02. As far as making it's requesting approval to demolish an existing single-family residence, subdivide a half-acre parcel into 2 lots, and construct 2 single-family residences on property zoned R18, APN 529-15021. As required by the state environmental guidelines adopted, the project is category exempt pursuant to section 15303 and 15315 of the state environmental guidelines. I've looked at we do find the findings on the demolition are in order, and the findings for the subdivision application are in order, and meeting the considerations listed in the exhibit. I'd like to add the following conditions, and I'd like my commissioners to help out here if we get a second, regarding having the community development director allow for the privacy issue that has been stated by Commissioner Talsford, and the height requirement by Commissioner O'Donnell. We're dropping it 6 inches.
Do we have a second? Do we have a second? Discussion? Commissioner Telesfori?
I have a question for Commissioner Bourgeois, may I, Chairman?
You may.
Commissioner Bourgeois, my understanding it was one tree, and it was the redwood tree? Was that what you were, that's what I was...
My specific comment was tree number 8. And so with all due respect, it made it sound like, you know, we're sacrificing. They're already taking out 7 trees. So we're going from 7 trees to 8 trees. They're going to have to mitigate for that tree. If you look at the arborist report, tree number 8 was in moderate condition or in fair condition, which is just the step right above poor. And it's going to have a level of impact 2, which is the next to highest. So this is a moderate condition tree that is going to have a fair level of impact from the development as is. So this is not, don't touch the oak. I don't want the 20-inch oak. It's nowhere near the project. It's very healthy. So I was specifically targeting tree 8, and if we can remove one additional tree, well, the site plan just has
Doesn't matter.
just has 8. No, I'm talking just about 8. I'm not talking. 10 is the oak tree.
Would you come to the mic and make the comment?
I think he said for the record that they couldn't do one story with just removing the redwood tree, and that they would want to remove the redwood and the oak.
And I thought that that's what they had said to the mic when you were talking to them.
Can I clarify?
Please.
When the going to one story.
I'm going to reopen the public hearing.
When the one story question came up, I said the oak tree and the redwood, and when the basement question came up, I said just the redwood. So if it's one story without a basement.
So if they did a basement.
Again, you're still. I don't know what square foot you're trying to target. So when I look at, if you take out tree 8, you can add significant square footage on that side of the house.
You're trying to get up to about 2,600.
Okay.
You can add a partial basement.
I'm going to close the public hearing. Do you want to comment, Commissioner Bourgeois?
No, I don't find removing tree number 10 acceptable. I think tree number 8 would be acceptable, but I don't find removing both of them acceptable.
So how does that put you with respect to?
Well, I think they could still do it, but they wouldn't hit their target square footage. It would have to be a smaller house, which, you know.
So how does that put you with respect to the motion?
He's going to vote on it. One way or the other.
I'm probably not going to support the motion, if that's what you're looking for.
That's what we're doing. We're discussing the motion. Any other discussion? Commissioner Telesfori.
I was only looking at removing tree 8, and it could be however they could manage the square footage. It could be a partial basement. I don't really know, but anything to reduce the second floor, and they could add it on this area here where the tree would be removed, and that's what I would support.
Commissioner Sayak.
I will not support the motion as is. I think I made it clear that I would like to see Lot 1, or I believe it's the 2-story. I can't remember which one it is.
Lot 1 is the 2-story.
S08043, the 2-story, to go back to staff to be worked on to see if any of the suggestions that have been raised tonight, including removal of just tree number 8, could somehow add some square footage on the first floor and perhaps move the second floor forward so that the concerns that some of the neighbors had raised on that backside could be mitigated and addressed.
Any other discussion? Seeing none, I'm going to call the question on the motion if we understand it. Commissioners, all those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed say nay. The nays have it 4-2. Do we have another motion? Commissioner Sayak, did you want to put that in the form of a motion, or did you, Commissioner Bourgeois?
Okay, I'll attempt this again. I move to approve the subdivision application M08003, approve architecture and site application S08044 for the single-story home. However, ask that architecture and site application S08043 on the two-story home come back to us at a future time. Now, before I do that, I would like to clarify through the chair to staff if they prefer to separate them out or just have it come back all at once.
Staff is suggesting that you can approve those portions, or those applications that you wish to approve, and I assume move to continue the application that you don't wish to approve, at least by way of the motion. The only thing that I'll add is that by separating out the various aspects of the application, it does change the appeal schedule with regard to the application, but it may very well be that the only issue anybody would be appealing would be the lot that is still in question. That's a practical issue.
Thank you. Is that your complete motion?
That is my complete motion.
Supplemented by the things Commissioner Machici said on the other required findings?
That is correct. So basically, the exact motion, except that architecture and site application S08043 come back at a future date.
So that would be a motion to continue.
To continue.
That application to allow the applicant to work with staff on some of the privacy view-related issues raised by in the testimony tonight. And that would be a continuation of that matter to a date certain?
That is correct.
Okay, and we'll need a date certain for that.
Let's get the date certain.
You just approved your meeting schedule, which I'm looking for, so it'd probably be the first meeting in February, could be the earliest one, giving staff some time, given that the holidays are upcoming, and also the already pending agendas for the January meetings. Your eyesight's better than mine.
January 28th?
February.
February 25th is the second. February 11th or February 25th?
February 11th. February 11th.
25.
February 11th.
February 11th. Commissioner Sayat, February 11th would be
Yes.
your date certain. Commissioner O'Donnell has a question.
I could certainly support part of that motion. To me, it's two motions. We have a motion to continue one of the applications, and we have another motion to approve that. So personally, if we could take it as two motions, I could do it, because I can vote in favor of the approval, and I would vote against the continuance. I'm going to lose that, but I don't want to vote against both of them. So can we have two motions?
Of course. Of course, that's at the discretion of the motion maker. If you're interested in modifying your motion to approve the two applications alone, making the findings necessary for that, and if the seconder approves of that modification of the motion, then you can deal with the last application separately.
Is that acceptable, Commissioner
That is acceptable to me.
Who's our seconder? Do we have a seconder?
Well,
Is that acceptable to you?
are you seconding both motions? Or
Just the first one.
just the first one? All right.
All right, we've done that. Discussion on these? I think it's a good idea. It allows the applicant to get started on what's been approved. So, seeing no other discussion, let's call the question. All those in favor, we're going to vote on these separately. Yes, we're voting first on the motion to approve the subdivision, and then all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed? Motion passes 6-0. Second motion is to send back.
Okay. No, as I understand it, and let's make certain that everybody else understood it, the first motion was to approve the subdivision application and the architecture and site application for the single story, that's lot 2. I won't repeat the number because I don't have it in front of me.
That's correct.
That was the motion with the findings. That was seconded, and I understand the vote was to approve that motion.
6-0.
Yes.
Right.
So now you need a second motion with regard to lot number 1. subdivision, or excuse me, architecture and site on,
Well, gee,
architecture and site on lot number 1.
Commissioner Sack has pretty much made that. Do you want to restate it?
I move to continue architecture and site application S08043, the two-story home, to February 11th, to allow the staff and the applicant time to revise the design to incorporate the comments that have been raised tonight.
A second?
Second.
Commissioner Talasfore, discussion?
Yeah, my only comment is why we have to continue it. If we're directing it to mitigate the problems, why can't we approve it with that mitigation comment?
Because the
And why
motion
bring it
maker
back
wants
here?
to see it back.
I mean, if they do it, it's coming back here for us to say, well, they've solved the problem. Why can't the community development director do that?
Because the motion maker has made the motion she has
That's
made.
why I prefer to see it done the other way rather than taking up the time to bring it back here. So, from my view, I agree with what they're trying to do.
I don't mind spending the time at a future meeting, Phil.
I know you don't, yeah, I know you don't.
Any
Very
other
good.
discussion?
Very good, Commissioner. So I wouldn't support it that way. I would ask for reconsideration to get those conditions into the approval of the community director, but not necessarily bring it back here to us to say they did it.
Thank you. Other discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed?
Nay.
Motion passes 5-1. Mr. Korb, are there appeal rights?
There are, with regard to the two applications that were approved by council, or excuse me, by the commission, those decisions are appealable. Anyone dissatisfied with that decision must appeal to the council. The appeal must be filed within 10 days. It must be filed upstairs in the clerk's office. There are fees for filing an appeal. With regard to the matter that was continued, there are no appeal rights regarding that decision. That matter will come back to the commission for decision in the first meeting in February. There will be no further notice with regard to that item, so keep that date, February 11th, in mind.
Thank you. We move on to item 5, report from the Director of Community Development. Ms. Hamilton, no report. We move to item 6, commission matters. Any commission matters, commissioners? Commissioner Bourgeois.
I guess maybe this is a question for the director. I guess we didn't receive any guidance on the election of the chair and vice chair, because the next meeting will be without a chair.
Oh, well, the vice chair would take over.
Okay.
Seeing no other items, it's been an exciting 4 years, and I still love this town, but I am done. This meeting is adjourned.